I discovered I was adopted at 27. The truth about my real family was worse. I was 27 years old, sitting in a hospital waiting room when a doctor walked up to me and said 4 words that cracked my entire life in half. "You're not a match." I didn't understand what he meant at first. I was there to donate bone marrow to my younger sister. We'd been tested. We were supposed to be compatible. We were family. But the doctor wasn't confused. He wasn't looking at the wrong chart. He looked me dead in the eye and said it again. "You're not a match. In fact, based on these results, you're not related to her at all." I laughed. Actually laughed. Because that was insane. That was impossible. Except it wasn't. And what came next wasn't just the discovery that I was adopted. It was the discovery of who I actually was. And why my parents had worked so hard to make sure I never found out. Part 1. The Life I Thought I Had. My name is, well, let's say my name is Daniel. And for 27 years, I had what looked like a perfectly normal life. Middle-class family, suburban neighborhood, 2 parents who loved me, a younger sister named Maya who annoyed me in the way only little sisters can. We had family dinners. We went on vacations. Mom cried at my high school graduation. Dad shook my hand and said he was proud of me. Nothing about my childhood screamed hidden secrets. Nothing felt off. I looked like my dad, same jaw, same dark eyes. Or at least, I thought I did. You see what you're told to see when you're not looking for anything else. I was living in my own apartment by then, working in logistics, nothing glamorous. Maya was 22, still living at home, and when she got sick, it started as fatigue. Everyone told her she was overworked. Then came the bruising. Then the blood work came back, and suddenly we weren't talking about stress anymore. We were talking about leukemia. The diagnosis hit our family like a freight train. My parents aged 10 years in 2 weeks. Maya handled it better than any of us. She cracked jokes in the oncologist's office. She sent me memes from her hospital bed. The doctor said a bone marrow transplant was her best shot, and they said the best donors are almost always siblings. So I didn't even hesitate. I called the clinic the same day. I said, "Test me. Whatever she needs." I never imagined the test would be the thing that destroyed everything. Part 2. The results. The doctor pulled me aside while my parents were with Maya. I remember thinking that was strange. Why not tell all of us together? He explained the results carefully, clinically. He said the compatibility markers didn't align. He said genetically, there was no biological relationship between me and Maya. I told him there must be a mistake. He said he understood why I'd think that, and that they'd run the test twice. Both times the same result. I walked out of that hospital in a fog. I sat in my car for 45 minutes and didn't move. I kept waiting for my phone to ring, for the doctor to call back and say there'd been a mix-up, a lab error, someone swapped the samples. The phone never rang. That night I drove to my parents' house. They were home. I walked in without knocking. I still had a key, and I sat down at the kitchen table, and I just looked at them. My mom knew immediately. I could see it. She went white. Her hand went to her mouth. My dad stood up like he was going to say something, but he didn't say a word. I put the test results on the table. I said, "Tell me the truth." And for the first time in 27 years, they did. Part 3. The Confession. My mother cried through almost all of it. My father did most of the talking. They told me I was adopted at 3 days old. A private adoption, no agency, no paper trail through the system, arranged through a family friend who was a lawyer. They said they'd been trying to have children for years with no success. That when the opportunity came, they took it. They said they always meant to tell me. That they planned to, when I was older. And then older, and somehow 27 years passed, and they'd convinced themselves it didn't matter. That I was theirs. That biology wasn't family, yet I didn't scream at them. I didn't flip the table. I just kept asking questions in a very quiet voice, and I think that scared them more than shouting would have. I asked, "Who are my biological parents?" My father looked at my mother. My mother looked at the table, and then my father said, "That's the part we need you to understand we were trying to protect you from." Part 4. The Real Family. It took 3 more hours to get the full story out of them. My biological mother was a 19-year-old woman named Carla. She was the daughter of a man my father had worked with years ago, a man he described carefully as someone who made very bad decisions. I pushed. I always push. Eventually, the word came out. Prison. My biological grandfather had been in and out of prison my entire life. My biological mother, Carla, had grown up in that chaos. Now, by the time she was pregnant with me at 19, she was in a relationship with a man my parents described only as dangerous. They said Carla had reached out to the family lawyer in desperation. She didn't want to raise a child in that environment. She wanted the baby, wanted me to disappear somewhere safe. She didn't want an open adoption. She didn't want contact. She wanted me gone from that world completely. My parents said they honored that they had no contact information for her, that they genuinely didn't know where she was or if she was even still alive. That last part landed strange, if she was even still alive. I filed that away and didn't say anything. I drove home that night with a name. Just one name. Carla. At Part 5. The Search. I want to be honest about what the next few weeks looked like, because I think people imagine this kind of search as cinematic, dramatic, a montage. It wasn't. It was me, alone, at midnight, on Ancestry websites and public records databases and Facebook, typing variations of a first name and a city and a grandfather's last name I'd managed to extract from my dad. I found a court record first. My biological grandfather, I'll call him Raymond, had a lengthy public criminal record. Fraud, assault, 2 stretches in federal prison. The most recent case was from 11 years ago. Then I found an obituary. Raymond had died in prison 4 years ago. I kept digging. And then, through a combination of the obituary's listed survivors and some careful searching on social media, I found her. Carla. She was 46 now. She was alive. And she lived less than 2 hours from me. She had a Facebook profile with a profile picture, a woman with dark eyes, dark hair, a cautious smile. I stared at that photo for a long time. She looked like me. Not exactly, but enough. The jaw, the eyes. Enough to make my chest do something complicated. I didn't message her that night. I waited a week. I drafted and deleted the message 11 times, and then one night I just hit send before I could stop myself. I said, "I think you might be my biological mother. I'm not reaching out to cause any disruption in your life. I just want to know where I came from. You can ignore this if you need to." She replied in 4 minutes. I've been waiting for this message for 27 years. Part 6. The Meeting. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our cities. Neutral ground. Her suggestion. I got there 20 minutes early and sat facing the door. When she walked in, I knew her immediately. The profile picture hadn't done justice to how much she looked like me, or I guess how much I looked like her. She sat down. We both just looked at each other for a moment. And then she laughed, this short, overwhelmed laugh, and said, "You have my nose. I wondered if you would." We talked for 4 hours. She told me her version of the story. She was 19, in a relationship she described as terrifying, living in her father's house, which she described as worse. She said when she found out she was pregnant, her only thought was, "Get this child out of here." She said the lawyer had been a lifeline. Yet she said giving me up was the hardest thing she ever did, and the thing she was most certain was right. She'd gotten out herself eventually, left the boyfriend, got away from her father, built a quiet, careful life. She had a daughter who was 19 now, she said, almost the same age Carla had been when she had me. And then she said something that reframed the entire story. She said, There's something about your biological father you should probably know. Part 7. The Final Revelation. The man she'd been with when she was 19, the dangerous one my adoptive parents had mentioned, was not just some troubled boyfriend. He had spent the last 2 decades in federal prison, not for drugs, not for fraud like her father, for crimes against children. Carla said she hadn't known the full extent of it when they were together. She said she knew he was violent, knew he was involved in things she didn't understand, knew she was afraid of him. But the full truth of what he was didn't come out until years later, when federal charges were filed and his name was in the news. She said the moment she saw that news story, her first thought was about me. She said, "I thanked God every single day that I got you out before he ever knew you existed." He hadn't known about the pregnancy. She'd hidden it, given birth quietly, arranged the adoption, and disappeared from his life shortly after. He had no idea I was born. He was still in prison. Would be for a long time. I drove home that night and sat in my parking lot and thought about the strange, specific luck of my own life. The series of decisions, my birth mother's terror and bravery, a lawyer's discretion, and my parents' choice to never speak of it, that had landed me in a safe suburb with people who loved me instead of in whatever that other life would have been. I thought about how close it could have gone differently. Carla and I still talk. Not every day. Not like mother and son. It's too complicated for clean labels. But we talk. She came to the hospital when Maya finished her last round of treatment. They found a donor match through the registry. Maya is in remission now. My adoptive parents and I went through a rough stretch. A long one. There was a period of about 6 months where I barely spoke to them. But they showed up for Maya the way they always had, and I watched them do it. And something in me couldn't stay closed off forever. We're not back to what we were. I don't know if we ever will be, but we're something. Or what I keep coming back to, the thing I can't quite shake, is how many people in this story made a decision in the dark without knowing how it would land. Carla at 19, terrified and alone, deciding to let me go. My parents deciding to keep the secret. The lawyer who facilitated all of it. Everyone thought they were doing the right thing. Maybe they were. Maybe that's the most unsettling part. If you were in my position, if you found out at 27 that your entire origin story was a secret, would you want to know the truth? Or would you have rather lived without it? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story hit you the way I think it did, the next one is even heavier. I'll see you there.